Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Ezekiel, the 37th chapter. And let's take a look here. Right, I believe in Ezekiel 36, the Lord was basically going into, as you can see in the different subheadings, the renewal and blessing of Israel. Okay, and in Ezekiel 37, which, there are numerous breakdowns out there. So most of us should be familiar with this chapter, but if you're not, well, here's another breakdown for you. And in here, basically, as an overview, it goes into the condition of the nation of Israel, likening them onto, dry bones, but how ultimately the Lord is going to go through the different stages of reviving us, and then ultimately, giving us that blessing of salvation and taking us back to our land. So this is the book of Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 1, vision of the valley of dry bones. The hand of the Lord Yahweh was upon me, and carried me out in the spirit of the Lord, and set me down in the midst of the valley, which was full of dry bones. And similarly, as we read in the beginning chapters of the book of Ezekiel, the Lord, he mentioned the same thing as to how the Lord carried him out in the spirit to Jerusalem to witness what was going on over there. So it could have been a form of, like an out-of-body experience. It could have been a form of him being in a trance, in a vision. All right, but the point is, here where he was taken, okay, he says it was a valley of dry bones, okay, or at least a valley full of bones. And so you can imagine a valley, right? A valley being that low land, typically a land between two mountains, like that's that low land. And in here, the valley is referring to Babylon, okay, or America. Now, here you may not think of it physically as a low land, but it's low morally, okay? When you look at really the corruption of the earth, all right, America has got to be, if not number one of the highest top of the list when it comes to low morals, all right? But as it says, which was full of bones. And as we're going to continue to read, you'll find out that the bones represent the house of Israel. Okay. And caused me to pass by them round about. And behold, there were very many in the open valley, and lo, they were very dry. And so these bones, okay, as Ezekiel is walking by, he's seeing there's so many bones that they're all dry. They're like somebody that's died, and they're when you watch those treasure hunter movies, like you have, these treasure hunters that go and they'll go into like this cave or something, and they'll see people who have tried to get that treasure prior to them, but fell for like booby traps. And then you can see the skeleton. Maybe it might still have some clothes on them, but the skeleton is all old and stuff like that. But you just see the bones, right? You don't see the flesh and none of that. So Ezekiel's walking by and he's seeing all these bones, dry bones in this valley. Okay, which, like I said, it's really a representation of the Israelites in here, all right, mainly here in Babylon, being that valley. And a precept for this is the book of Revelation chapter 11, and just getting to the point here in verse 8. Okay, now as it reads here, Revelation chapter 11 and 8, and their dead bodies, because if you really keep in mind, throughout the history of Israel, even in our various different captivities, it's here in America that we were at the most, the lowest, most destitute point. All right, even when we fled from Roman persecution into the interiors of Africa and different parts of the world, we weren't, in the state that we came to be in after being brought here to America to serve captivity. And you can watch different movies and documentaries that depict or try to depict the conditions that we were in having been brought here. And you can see that we were so low that we couldn't even read and write. We weren't even allowed to do that. Okay, considered 3/5 of a man. So that was that's a dead-like state, and that's what those dry bones represent. And the precept for that here is Ezekiel 11:8, and their dead bodies. This is referring to the Israelites. Okay, so their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city. Now, two things here. Dead bodies, it's not literal. Okay, when it says their dead bodies, it's not referring to them being literally dead, but rather being spiritually dead, meaning, all right, they lacked, okay, at one point we lacked that breath of life, which is the correct understanding of scriptures, all right, i.e., it comes by the Spirit of the Lord. So we were just, pretty much going about without having the true understanding, and the scriptures tell you that is likened unto being dead. All right, I believe it's Proverbs. I always get this mixed up. Is it 21:16? Yeah, Proverbs chapter 21 verse 16. The man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead. So if you lack understanding, which wisdom and knowledge can be encompassed in that, because in order to gain true understanding, you need to have knowledge, okay, and properly apply that knowledge. And if you can properly apply that knowledge, then that means you understand it. Okay, you've developed some understanding of it. And so having understanding encompasses wisdom and knowledge. And the man that wanders out of the way of that remains in the congregation of the dead. So you're likened unto being dead if you are without that knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. More specifically, the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of the Holy Scriptures. Okay. So going back to Revelation chapter 11:8, the dead bodies here are Israel being without that knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Okay. And shall lie in the street of the great city. This great city here is Babylon, otherwise known as America. And to prove that, let's go to Revelation chapter 17. Revelation chapter 17, verse 1. And there came one of the seven angels, and this is a vision that the Apostle John received, which had seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither. So he saw one of these angels. The angel told him, Come over here. I will show thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. And so the angel says, that whore that you saw, that's top dog. I'm going to show you what's going to happen to her. And that whore is otherwise known as Babylon, which is also talking about America. So when you jump down, that same whore, this is describing her. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great. Why was it called Mystery Babylon the Great? Because for a period of time, at least now, the mystery has been, demystified. But for a period of time, nobody was really able to, it wasn't widely known and acknowledged that Babylon the Great, okay, the place of future judgment in the Bible, was America. Okay, so that was a mystery until, the Lord put the Spirit out there for it to become a more widely known thing, as we teach today. The mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So this woman, this whore, otherwise known as Babylon, okay, when we jump down, the angel is going to expound even more. Okay, so when you jump down to verse 18, it says, And the woman which thou sawest is that great city. There you go with that term again, right? That great city. The same great city that's mentioned in Revelation 11, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Okay, so when you come back to Revelation 11, their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city. It's the same great city, which is also the woman, which is America, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt. So this place is not, obviously this is not Sodom, all right, and this is not Egypt, but why is it spiritually called that? Because I'm sure I don't need to explain to you the correlation between America today and what Sodom was like, Sodom and Gomorrah back in the past, right? And likewise with Egypt, Egypt was known as the place of our captivity, of our bondage. And when we came here, what was the case here? We were made captives and served hardcore bondage and captivity. And in addition to that, this place has adopted a good portion of, the Egyptian ways and customs, and they've incorporated it into their holidays and way of living today, where also our Lord was crucified. Now, once again, we know that our Lord was not crucified in America. He wasn't crucified in Sodom, and he wasn't crucified in Egypt. Okay, so why does it say here is where he was crucified? It's not referring to crucifixion in the literal sense, but crucifixion in more of the, in terms of who he is, his character, his name. So Yahushai, all right, which is the actual Messiah, he is crucified in this land. Okay, and instead they put up an Edomite looking dude calling him Jesus Christ and all of that, and they run with it. Okay, but the point in bringing out this precept is to link that dead bodies, which when you deal with Ezekiel, dry bones, well, what happens when somebody dies? Their body, their flesh starts to decay, and eventually it rots away, and then eventually what are you left with? Bones. So bones and dead bodies, same thing. Okay, but it's representing the dead-like state, okay, of the Israelites here. So verse 3, and he said unto me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I answered, O Lord God, thou knowest. Because, you would feel like it's kind of like a trick question, right? I mean, what do you mean, can these bones live? They're pretty, how are they gonna, well, you know, right? Because if I say no, you could say yes. If I say yes, you could say no. You're it's up to you, really, right? Verse 4, again, he said unto me, prophesy upon these bones, and say unto them, O ye dry bones, hear the word of the Lord Yahweh. So the Lord basically told Ezekiel. Now remember that this is what Ezekiel is experiencing, but it is a representation, okay, of something else. Why did the Lord take Ezekiel to this valley of dry bones and tell him to prophesy onto those bones? What does that mean? What did that signify? And that's what we're going through now. So as Ezekiel is prophesying, prophesying is to say before, right? So the Lord is telling Ezekiel, basically give these bones a forecast. Tell them what's going to happen. And tell them, right, that this is what I said. Verse 5, thus saith the Lord Yahweh unto these bones, behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and ye shall live. So the Lord told Ezekiel, you see these bones right here? Tell them that in the future, prophesy unto them, and tell them what I'm going to do is I'm going to put breath into them, and they're going to come to life. And as Ezekiel obviously, did that at the Lord's commandment, then it really signified the prophets in this time, okay, coming on the scene and prophesying onto those bones, which represent Israelites that are in a dead-like state, not knowing that they're Israelites, not knowing the name of the Most High, not knowing their customs or heritage or any of that. And so the prophets on the scene, pursuant to 1 Corinthians 4:9, prophesying onto the Israelites who are in this dead-like state and telling them that the Most High is going to revive us. He's going to take us from this low state. He's going to raise us up back into our high glory. And he's going to ultimately, as it says, we're going to live, right? He's going to bless us with that wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Now that breath, okay, represents the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, like I mentioned before. And let's get a quick precept to prove that. Let's get Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7. And I believe it should be around the 24th. There we go. So this is Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7, verse 24. For wisdom is more moving than any motion. She passeth and goeth through all things by reason of her pureness. For she, wisdom, is the breath, keyword breath, of the power of God, and a pure influence flowing from the glory of the Almighty. Therefore can no defiled thing fall into her. And that's the key part that we're looking for right there. Wisdom is the breath ultimately of God. So when you come back to Ezekiel 37, when the Lord says, I will cause breath to enter into you, really what he is saying is, I'm going to cause wisdom. Okay, I'm going to give you my wisdom, the wisdom from me, the holy and true life-giving wisdom, and you're going to be living, meaning now you're going to be alive before me. Okay, similar to the time of creation, what made us separate? What made Adam a living soul? He was already alive. Okay, but when the Lord breathed into him, he became living, meaning he became spiritually living, like we read. I don't have the precept here anymore, but we read in Proverbs 21:16. So now he became, I guess for a lack of a better word, competent before the Lord. And that's what the Lord is saying he's gonna do here. Verse 6, and I will lay sinews upon you, and will bring up flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and ye shall live, and ye shall know that I am the Lord. Now, when you look up the word sinews, getting into a bit of biology here, it says here sinew, and I think, where's a strong definition? All right, let's look it up in the regular dictionary. Sinews, not the diagram. So sinews, it says a piece of tough fibrous tissue uniting muscle to bone or bone to bone, a tendon or ligament. So if you look at, let me see, skeleton bones, right? If you take a look at this, you see this right here? Let me see, one that's not assembled, but this is fine. If you take a look at this right here, these are like individual pieces, right? But for some way, they're able to be joined. Because you see this is a joint. That's a joint. That's a joint. And that's a connection between another piece and another piece. So you see this part of the bone? I don't even remember. I'm not even going to attempt this one here. Oh, yep, yes I am. It's the femur. Okay. And so, no, I wasn't looking here. But anyway, this is able to connect to down here because of whatever's joining it right here at the joint. And that's where you get the sinews. Okay, so they can join bone to bone, but also muscle to bone, because you have the skeletal structure on the base level, and then you have the muscular, where you have the muscles that are able to contract and expand and cause you to move and stuff like that. So they go up top this, and then ultimately you got the skin on top of all of it. All right, and that's what the Lord is saying. Here you are bones. You're in a completely destitute and dead state, but I'm gonna cause the sinews to come upon you, and that's gonna what? Join those bones, and then I'm gonna bring that flesh. I'm gonna put the muscles all on you, and then I'm gonna cover you, with skin. Okay. Now, I wonder if they'll show it here. Let me see. Attack on Titan. I wonder if they'll show the actual. So they don't really show it here, but this anime called Attack on Titan. Long story short, people are able to transform into these giant, like actual giant creatures that are called Titans. And when you actually look at a clip of the transformation, like if they bleed, it triggers something that transforms them. And when you look at the transformation, it starts off with, you'll see the skeletal structure, and then you'll see like the muscles and the fibers all wrap around it, and then you'll see like the skin. Okay, so I was just like maybe if you look up a transformation of it, you'll see it'll start with the skeletal, and then it'll put the muscles and all that on top. So just like a depiction. So coming back to Ezekiel 37, what the Lord is in verse 6, these were to represent the different stages in which the Lord would take us from being in a completely dead-like state, a completely low and destitute state, to bringing us back into our former glory. Okay, where we would know, as it says, ye shall live and ye shall know that I am the Lord. Okay. Let's see, 1 second. Yep, you shall know that I am the Lord. So now it's going to go into the different various steps. So where we are, verse 7. So I prophesied as I was commanded. And as I prophesied, there was a noise, and behold, a shaking, and the bones came together, bone to his bone. So as Ezekiel, in this vision that he's getting, right, he's prophesying, and he sees the shaking, he feels the shaking, then all of a sudden the bones are starting to come together now, And what this represented was that, remember, bone to bone is another way of saying, kinship. Okay, and the precept for that, quick one, is in the book of 2 Samuel chapter 19 verse 11, where they use the term or analogy of a bone being joined to another bone to represent a tight relationship mainly between like kins or family or one of the same nation. So this is 2 Samuel 19 and 11. And King David sent to Zadok and Abiathar the priests, saying, Speak unto the elders of Judah, saying, Why are ye the last to bring the king back to his house? Seeing the speech of all Israel is come to the king, even to his house, ye are my brethren, ye are my bones and my flesh. Wherefore then are ye the last to bring back the king? And say ye to Amasa, Art thou not of my bone and of my flesh? God do so to me, and more also, if thou be not captain of the host before me continually in the room of Joab. See, so there goes the analogy again of the bones representing, like your brethren. So what Ezekiel seeing here, those bones coming together, was to signify how in this time you would go from that state. Because remember, back in our destitute state, not being able to read, write, being in a completely low state, there was also a lot of division, which was techniques that were employed by Esau to keep us separate because they understood the power in unity. Okay, and so at this point in time, with the bones coming together, you start to have Israel coming together. Okay, starting to join and band together. So you start to have like different groups. Like Judah. No longer you having like that whole field slave, house slave separation type. Just an analogy there. But they start to unify under different causes, right? You also had, different groups in the northern kingdom unifying, okay? And then eventually, as time went on, we started to come together, not just within tribes, but like cross tribes. So now you're seeing like Judites, like southern kingdom and northern kingdom, all intermingling, okay? Verse 8, and when I beheld, lo, the sinews and the flesh came upon them. So as he was prophesying, he sees the bones coming together, and then he sees the sinews joining, all right, connecting the bones, and then the flesh coming up and covering them. Okay, but there was no breath in them. And what that signified was, as we started to come together and join together under different causes, like there were different reasons now as to us being unified, whether under like some black organization or some Latina or whatever they would call it, even if it's a gang. All right, there was just the joining of Israelites from separation to being joined, okay, and now coming under something that we could use to identify us as this collective group. However, regardless of what all those different causes were, they weren't that ultimate cause that would bring us together or bring us that life, which is this truth. So eventually Jake started coming together, but it wasn't under the truth. That's why there was no breath in them. Verse 9, then said he unto me, prophesy unto the wind. Prophesy, son of man, and say to the wind, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe upon these slain that they may live. Okay, so pretty much now the next thing that was left was for the words of the Lord to be preached, to stir up our our minds by way of our pure minds by way of remembrance, that we may be brought to life again by knowing our nationality, knowing the name of our God, our heritage, who we are, and all of that. Because now we're joined, but now we need the right cause, right? We need to be made living. Verse 10. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and the breath came into them, and they lived and stood upon their feet, an exceeding great army. So this is what Ezekiel saw, and what it represented was, the Lord bringing the prophets on the scene, right? Starting with Elder Abba Bivens, and the Lord, that breath being this truth, right? So the Lord brought this, but in increments, So He gave, a portion to Elder Abba Bivens, and notice how it says that the winds came from the breath came from the four winds, right? Because these elites paid good money to hide this information, but it seems like it came out of nowhere, for somebody to, right, as they would say, randomly start going in the right direction, to start hitting the nail right on the head when it comes to actually understanding the Bible in its correct sense and relating it to us, right, as the Israelites, because it was time for that breath to come. Okay, and then you had other elders and teachers, right? High Priest Ariah, King Masha, High Priest Yaikwab, and more that contributed, okay, even up unto our elders and apostles. And so as as the breath came upon them, they started to live, they started to go and teach. And as they were teaching, okay, as they were prophesying, ultimately you got up to the point where now you had the internet, you had, the YouTube and all these Daily Motion and different platforms. And then from there, the breath spread even further. And more of us were hearing it, and as we heard it, we also became alive. And then you start to have different camps, different groups, different bands of brothers in different parts of the world standing up, going out there prophesying. Okay, and that's where you get that exceeding great army. Because when you look into the word army, it's really like, a force, mainly of men. Okay, but we're not, a carnal army, but a spiritual one. Okay, where we teach the scriptures. Verse 11. Then he said unto me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, our bones are dried, our hope is lost. We are cut off for our parts. Because remember that what the verses we just read above, at the time that Ezekiel was seeing this, we weren't here on the scene, right? We weren't in America. Everything I just described to you about us prophesying, that hadn't happened yet, right? So the condition that Israel was in at this time was what we're reading of here in verse 11, right? As it says, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, our bones are dried, right? And our hope is lost, and we are cut off for our parts. Because what was the condition of Israel at this time? You had us in captivity. Our land was destroyed. The temple was destroyed. Jerusalem was destroyed. We were in captivity. We were in a low state. We were destitute. Okay. And on top of that, we were divided. The northern kingdom had been taken into captivity, and then they went to the Americas. The southern kingdom, the bulk of them were also taken into captivity, and then you had, other Israelites that had fled and been scattered. Okay, so we were cut off, from our parts, from the different tribes. We were all separated. Okay, verse 12. Therefore prophesy and say unto them, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, O my people, I will open your graves and cause you to come up out of your graves and bring you into the land of Israel. So when you're in your graves, and when somebody comes out of their graves, they've been revived. And that's pretty much what the Lord is saying here. Okay, I'm going to take you from that dead-like state, and I'm going to raise you up. I'm going to give you this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding so you can become living. And then when I send my son back, he's going to deliver you and take you back to the land that I promised to your forefathers. And that's why it's a prophecy, because this is something that's going to happen in the future. And ye shall know that I am the Lord Yahweh when I have opened your graves, O my people, and brought you up out of your graves. Yeah, because once the Lord does that, we would have the knowledge of who our God is, who we are, how we ended up here, and who's the cause of all of this. And we would know that it's the Lord doing this, as it says, and shall put my spirit in you, and ye shall live. And I shall place you in your own land. Then shall ye know that I, the Lord Yahweh, have spoken it and performed it, saith the Lord Yahweh. And a quick precept for that is in the book of Baruch, the 2nd chapter. So let's get that real quick. This is Baruch chapter 2. I'm just going to go straight to the point here, which is verse 30. For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people. But in the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves, primarily here in America, in Babylon. And we were able to remember ourselves, right? And shall know that I am the Lord their God, for I will give them an heart and ears to hear. And that's that breath. Okay, so we were able to remember ourselves and know our God because he revived us, right? And they shall praise me in the land of their captivity, and think upon my name, and return from their stiff neck and from their wicked deeds. And that's how we become living before the Lord. For they shall remember the way of their fathers which sinned before the Lord. And what? And I will bring them again into the land which I promised with an oath unto their fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they shall be lords of it, and I will increase them, and they shall not be diminished. So when you come back here, the Lord said he's going to bring us out of the graves and what? Take us into the land of Israel, and we're going to know that he is the Lord because he's going to put his spirit within us. And through that revival, we're going to know who we are and know who our God is and know that he's the one doing all this, right? And ye shall know that I, the Lord, have spoken it and performed it, saith the Lord. Verse 15. The first 14 verses is one part. Okay. Now the second part says, the word of the Lord came again unto me. Okay, so now the Lord came back to Ezekiel, and this time with another message saying, moreover, so in addition, thou son of man, take thee one stick, which when you go into the word stick, it's not like a twig. Okay, it's a plank, and write upon it for Judah and for the children of Israel, his companions. So i.e. the southern kingdom. So you had Judah, and then you had the other tribes, Benjamin and Levi. Then take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions. So you have Ephraim, and then the remaining of the 10 tribes. Now, it mentions Joseph because originally Joseph was the head, right? He got the birthright because it went from Reuben to Joseph. Okay, and let's get that real quick. First Chronicles chapter 5, verse 1. Now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, because it's going into their genealogy, and then it tells you here, for he was the firstborn, that's Reuben, and by custom the firstborn gets the birthright. But for as much as he defiled his father's bed by sleeping with his father's concubine, his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel. And the genealogy is not to be reckoned after the birthright. So we know that the birthright that was originally supposed to be given to Reuben was given to Joseph. However, when you read in Genesis 49, it was transferred rather to Ephraim in Joseph's stead. That's why sometimes when you read the scriptures, when it talks about the tribes, you'll see that Joseph and Ephraim are interchangeable. Okay, so that birthright then landed upon Ephraim. And obviously, the blessing went to Joseph's blessing went to Ephraim and Manasseh, but the greater portion went to Ephraim. And it says here, for Judah prevailed above his brethren, and of him came the chief ruler, but the birthright was Joseph's. So Judah is the head tribe because, as it says, they prevailed. However, the birthright went to Joseph, i.e. transferred to Ephraim. So when you go back to Ezekiel 37, that's why you have here one stick for Judah, the southern kingdom, and then another stick for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, right? And for all the house of Israel, his companions. So basically you would have Judah, Benjamin, Levi, and then the rest of the rest of the tribes. It says, and join them one to another into one stick. So you take one stick, you write, for Judah and his companions, another stick for Ephraim and his companions, and then join them together into one. So now all of the tribes are on one. And they shall become one in thine hand. And when the children of thy people shall speak unto thee, saying, wilt thou not shew us what thou meanest by these? And this is, in today's day, this is where we have why we have the 12 tribes sign, which has the all the tribes listed on it. Okay. Now, at this point in time, the Lord did tell Ezekiel to actually do this. And then the Lord told him, when you do this, just like in the previous chapters, when the Lord told Ezekiel to do something, it was so that, because remember, Ezekiel was a captive in Babylon at this time, along with the other captives of Israel. So whenever the Lord asked him to do something, it would be so that the rest of the captives would see it and they would inquire. They would say, what the hell are you doing? And then you would explain to them, well, just like I just did this, this is how the Lord is going to do X, Y, and Z. So similarly, the Lord told Ezekiel to take the stick, write the names upon it, right, and join them together. And when the children of thy people shall speak unto thee, saying, wilt thou not show us what thou meanest by these? So when they look at him and they see him with that, they go and say, what are you doing this time? Like, what does this mean? Say unto them, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel his fellows, and will put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in mine hand. So the Lord was telling Ezekiel to do this, and when they ask, you would tell them this is a representation of what the Lord is going to do with the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, in today's day and age, it's the same thing. We have the sign, so when people come up and they ask, they ask about the sign, they inquire about it, then we go into it and we break it down and we tell them, these are the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel, and we go into it. Okay? So like a conversation starter. Because believe it or not, a lot of people that pass by, even if they don't say anything, they'll either want to take a picture of the sign, or they'll want to stop and, or they'll just walk by, but they'll look at the sign. It's always an eye catcher for them. Verse 20, and the sticks whereon thou writest shall be in thine hand before their eyes, and say unto them, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side, and bring them into their own land. And that's what's going to happen, right? The Lord is going to take us, deliver us from all the different parts that we've been scattered, mainly here in America, but in all the different parts as well, and bring us into the land of Israel. And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all, and that king is King David. Okay, because ultimately you're going to have the Most High Yahushua, and then you're going to have King David over, the nation. And there shall be no more two nations, which goes back into the history after the rule of King Solomon. The kingdom of Israel was divided. You had the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom. So the Lord is saying here, I'm going to do away with that, and I'm going to bring them back to one. Neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms any more at all. Neither shall they defile themselves any more with their idols, nor with their detestable things, nor with any of their transgressions, But I will save them out of all their dwelling places wherein they have sinned, and will cleanse them. So shall they be my people, and I will be their God. So the Lord is saying, I'm going to take you out of the different captivities. I'm going to cleanse you up. You're going to stop the idol worship and all the things that made you dead. Okay. I'm going to put an end to all of that. Okay. And this is going to start with the Lord's elect, because they're going to be the first ones to leave off from the idols and the detestable things and the transgressions. Okay. And then through them, the rest of the nation. Verse 24, and David, my servant, shall be king over them. And this is going to happen in the kingdom. This hasn't happened yet. Okay. This is going to happen in the kingdom. This whole part about us being ultimately joined together officially, like where you're seeing the joining now. Okay. But this is talking about when the Lord, finalizes it all and we're made one. We're not sinning anymore. Why? Because of the new covenant. Okay. And then we're going to be in that kingdom, right? That's why you see it says the Davidic kingdom. And David, my servant, shall be king over them, and they all shall have one shepherd. They shall also walk in my judgments and observe my statutes and do them. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob my servant, which is the land of Israel, wherein your fathers have dwelt, and they shall dwell therein, even they and their children and their children's children forever. And my servant David shall be their prince forever. How's he going to do that? Because that's a sign of immortality right there. How is David going to be their prince forever? He's going to have to live forever, do that. Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them. And I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forever. So that covenant the Lord is going to make is going to be one where he's going to put the laws in our inward parts. So we're going to be programmed to keep the laws, and we're never going to break them. Hence, we're never going to die, because death is a penalty of breaking those laws. And as it says, I will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forever, which is really referring to the Lord's holy place will be in the midst of us, but it's not literal, right? And as we read verse 27, my tabernacle also shall be with them, meaning your tabernacle is your dwelling place. So that's what the Lord is saying here. He's going to dwell with us. In the ancient world, it was done by way of a physical temple, but there's not going to be a need for that, because we are that temple. So him dwelling among us is likened unto that. Yea, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And when you go to the book of Revelation chapter 21, this is a vision that the Apostle John saw of the kingdom. And when you come down, he'll tell you himself that as he was seeing this vision, verse 22, and I saw no temple therein. He saw the gates, he saw the precious stones, he saw how it was put together, but he didn't see a temple. For the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb, which is Yahushai, are the temple of it. Okay, so there's not going to need to be a physical one. But here what it's saying is the Lord's holy place and his dwelling place is going to be with us. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And the heathen shall know that I, the Lord Yahweh, do sanctify Israel. So he has made us holy. He has cleaned us up. He has taken us from that dry, dead bones, all right, and raised us up, made us alive. When my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forevermore. And that's the end of the book of Ezekiel, the 37th chapter. Lord willing, this is edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rachak, Wadash. And until next time, Shalom.